Welcome in Bears Nation podcast. It is Wednesday, February 15th. Myself, Jake Hassan, joined as always by Kevin Lapka. And it is post Super Bowl, first show post the NFL season concluding, first show really of the actual offseason. And so today, in the spirit of the offseason, we're going to do our first mock draft. We're going to mock draft the first two rounds. We're going to put it up. We're going to go through it. We're going to talk through. I think we're both going to advocate for a trade down. We'll talk through it, see what we can get, and go from there. But that's what we have on tap today. We're going to hit a couple other things, newsy things off the top. Obviously, the Bears close on the Arlington Heights property today as of this afternoon. That became official. And Jim Irsay is just off the liquors. I don't know what the hell is going on with that guy. We'll talk about that too, and then we'll get to the mock draft. But Kevin Lapka, how we doing?
We're doing good, man. You know, this is our time now, right? We have the first overall pick in the draft. We're going to make all the noise in free agency. This is our time. Chicago Bears fans, we own the next couple of months here. So it's actually going to be fun, right? You know, it's been kind of a dead year for us. You know, the Bears were really bad. There wasn't a lot to talk about week to week other than Justin Fields, and we were kind of beating a dead horse. So to have something new to talk about, do some mock drafts, it's going to be fun, man. And, you know, the smoke has already started, as Jake already mentioned, with Jim Irsay coming out and tweeting things. And then, of course, Jason Lockcuff, fucking idiot, let's call him that, coming out today about, I'm hearing these rumblings about multiple GMs walked away from the Senior Bowl assuming that the Bears could trade Justin Fields. No, we're not going to do that, but that's not going to be the last tweet that you'll see from a, quote, reporter in the next couple of months regarding the status of Justin Fields as QB1 of the Chicago Bears. So it is going to be an eventful next few months, but at the same time, now that I'm thinking about it, like, it's going to be kind of freaking annoying to like deal with all of these rumors and narratives for 2 more months.
Yeah, I mean, it's all that's going to happen. I mean, we have 2.5 months until the draft. If it doesn't happen like Kevin thinks with, a trade coming in the next month or so, like it did for the San Francisco 49ers when they moved up to number 3 for Trey Lance famously, then we're going to be sitting here a while. We're going to be sitting here with a lot of Justin Fields rumors, a lot of different rumors all over the place. So we'll talk about that. I think we're both in the same. I think the lock and four tweet was purely deception, purely smokescreen, purely, just gamesmanship by, somebody within the Bears, somebody outside of maybe another organization. But I don't think that there's any truth. I mean, Justin Fields is literally doing interviews left, right, and center suddenly after not doing a lot of interviews before prior to his career. Now he's doing Part of My Take. He was at Radio Row for the Super Bowl, going left, right, center. And on Part of My Take, he's saying, Bear for life, 100%. Like, obviously take that for what it is, tongue in cheek. It's February 15th and it's Part of My Take. But Justin Fields is very publicly going the media circuit being like, I've talked to everyone and, I feel good about where we're at, blah, blah. So I don't think one tweet is going to shift the needle that much unless it's Jim Irsay, owner of the Colts, tweeting about how he has history with the Bears going back 60 years, tweeting a picture of himself as a kid at Lincoln Park Zoo. Unless you're Jim Irsay up here at the press conference for your brand new head coach with your GM and saying, this kid from Alabama looks pretty good. And we do need a quarterback. And your GM is like, dude, shut up. And it's just the most bizarre thing in the entire world. Jim Irsay is one of a kind, truly.
He is one of a kind. Like, for people who don't really know Jim Irsay outside of football, like, he's a very interesting dude. Like, he was on The Score a couple times because they have like this Jim Irsay collection thing where he like collects a bunch of historical musical artifacts and stuff. Like, he's a really out there guy, and he's like very interesting dude. But here's my theory. So I texted you. I was like, I have a theory about this and why this is happening. And this is my theory. And I'll give a little bit of credit to Ernie Scatton, who kind of brought this up to me a couple weeks ago. And now what he thought, his theory is sort of coming to fruition. And I think it's this. This feels like almost intentional smoke screening. This is like intentionally creating smoke, in my opinion, because I think what they're trying to do is force the Texans' hand. It's a classic bluff, right? You know, you're playing poker. The Colts, right now, they have a 2 and a 7 in their hand, and the Texans have pocket aces. But the Colts just went all in, and they're trying to force the Texans to call their bluff. So they're creating all this smoke that, hey, we want to move up to number 1. We really want Bryce Young. This is our guy, right? We want to do this, and we're going to make it clear that we do this. And obviously, the Colts and Texans in the same division, the Texans are sitting there probably getting a little nervous, saying, okay, we know that the Colts are willing to give up all these assets. We know they're willing to go all in, okay? So we might have to, on draft day or earlier, kind of do something we don't want to do and give up more to move up to number 1. That's what I think the Colts are trying to force, right? You want to force the Houston Texans to sell more assets, to give up more, to get a guy that maybe the Colts don't even want. Maybe Bryce Young isn't even their guy. There was rumors connecting them to Will Levis, saying that they like Will Levis, right? You know, maybe they have a better evaluation for CJ Stroud. There are reasons to believe that there is a team concerned about Bryce Young. This isn't a Trevor Lawrence situation. This isn't a consensus number 1 overall. I think he will go number 1 overall, but it's not consensus the way it was for guys in the past. They could be very well content with getting CJ Stroud or Will Levis, but creating this smoke saying, hey, we might, Houston, we might move up. Like, you better be ready. So this, to me, is a perfect situation for the Bears, because if they're forcing the Texans to play their hand, then you might get lucky and you might catch the Texans off guard where the Texans say, hey, we really want Bryce Young, but the only way we can do it is if we move up to number 1 to prevent the Colts from moving up to number 1. We're going to get desperate, give you more than maybe we were initially asking for to prevent a division rival from getting who we believe is a generational quarterback in Bryce Young or whoever it may be. And there you go, boom. They give you a couple first-round picks. They give you a couple second-round picks and an all-time haul to move up 1 slot because they were nervous of a division rival picking up their generational quarterback. That's the way I see this, Jake. I don't know if you kind of agree, but
so I guess my only thing with that is, why would the Colts be inclined to help the Bears to make the Texans up their offer? Like, why would Jim Irsay, why would Chris Ballard say, okay, well, let's put this smoke screen out there to try and help the Bears? Like, how does that benefit them?
It's not helping the Bears, I don't think. I think it's more of, hey, we're trying to force the Texans to do something wrong. And yeah, in consequence, it does maybe help the Bears, but they don't care. We're an NFC team. It has them helping us has nothing to do with them, right? Like, giving up if they were to eventually move up, yes, giving up the assets would help us. But if this truly is a smokescreen, like I'm pitching it as, is just, hey, this is just a bunch of nonsense. And because Jake, is it just me, or is like, that's weird? Like, Jay Irsay's weird, but you don't just go on Twitter and do that. You don't do that. That is way too outgoing. That is way too non-confidential for that to be anything other than to be a smokescreen.
So I would say it's. I don't think you're completely wrong. I think that maybe this is probably what it is. I think Irsay wants that pick. I think they want that pick.
You think
I think
he
they want a quarterback. But I also think it's okay. Hey, we have an offer in our head that we're gonna, let's say it's 4 and 35 and a 4th this year and 2 more firsts or something. Whatever. Whatever you want to say it is. Let's say the Colts have it in their head. This is what we're offering. Here we go. Okay, here's our offer. But if you're them, also knowing that you have another division rival, a couple spots ahead of you at 2, who's also looking for a quarterback, theoretically, who's also kind of going through the same thing you are with an overhaul as far as the coach and, a new regime and stuff like that. I think it's, okay, we're going to take this swing. And if we miss because the Texans decided to up their offer dramatically, then okay. Like, I think the fallback plan is, okay, the Texans got scared and got desperate. We wanted that pick, but okay, we'll accept the Texans offering like 1 and 12. Because remember, the Texans have 2 picks. They have the Cleveland pick from the Deshaun Watson trade. So maybe it's a play, like you said, for Houston to try and maybe give up number 1 and number 12 to make sure that they're really there. Now, that would be huge and a really, really big, massive haul for the Bears. But I'm not saying that's going to happen. Don't have any info on that, obviously. But maybe that's the goal. Like, okay, we're still going to take the swing, but if we miss, let's at least make sure Houston has to pay an arm and a leg and another leg for it if we're going to miss. Maybe that's what it is. I think the interest is genuine.
I think the interest is genuine, sure. Yeah. But I think both things can be true, right? Both things could
Right,
be true.
sure.
Like, it's a win-win
Right.
situation for them. Like, they could easily move up and get their guy good, or they could force the Texans to do something stupid, and maybe they're still content with a C.J. Stroud or Will Levis or something. You don't know. Like, it's possible. But, like, at the very least, we know that a team is extremely interested in moving up, right? Like, if
Yes.
if they are doing this motion and it doesn't work, right? And the Texans are going to say, you know what, we're not going to give up a ton of assets. We're just going to sit back and take, the next best guy, whoever's taking first. Okay, fine, we'll take whoever's second. Like, they could very well sit there and say that. Then you at least know that, all right, if they're not going to move up, the Colts are interested, and that's like the second best scenario. Like, I think the Texans trading with the Texans is the number one scenario in my opinion, because that forces you to really be in the realm of possibility for a double trade down, or have your choosing of a Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, where if you get to 4, you're probably going to have to get there with the next best guy. Like, someone's going to take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter at 3. You're going to be left with whoever. And for a lot of teams, it's kind of splitting hairs. I don't know who would go first of those two guys right now. But, if you have you don't control who you'd be able to take it for. But it's a good situation for the Bears that someone is interested, and that there is definitely a possibility, at least right now, for one team to trade down with. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of also in tandem with the Lock and Forward tweet, as far as, a lot of people walked away from the Senior Bowl under the impression the Bears might trade Justin Fields. That probably means the Bears would listen on Justin Fields. They'll pick up the phone probably and be like, all right, well, what do you got? But, if somebody, if Mark Davis in Vegas is like, hey, let's talk about Justin Fields. Polls might be like, okay, we can talk about Justin Fields. I don't like your chances, but we can talk about it. Like, I feel like that's probably more of what it is. And it's a little bit of a spin like, oh, they might trade him. It's probably more of like they're going to listen on him, but really they like Justin Fields. And also it might just be something from, hey, hey, Jason, this is Ryan Poles, we might listen on Justin Fields. Click. Like, it's like, it could be very much something like that too. So it could go any which way. And if this is already out there because also, if you're the Bears, you don't want to be sitting there at 1 and everyone thinks, all right, well, it's the Colts and that's it. Like, you don't want everyone to just kind of throw in the towel because it's assumed that you're just going to work with the Colts and that's going to be that, like that could also be part of like, hey, no, we're still, we're still listening on everything. So just something else to think of.
It's either that or Jason La Canfora is just a fucking idiot and lying. Like, there's a very real possibility that that's true. Like, he's been wrong about so many things that there is a possibility that is not a even remotely close to report. But if it is, then yeah. Like, Rich Eisen, when Justin Fields went on Rich Eisen's show, which I thought was a real interesting conversation, and Rich Eisen, asked him, he was like, are you understanding of the fact that they might have those conversations just because they have to, right? And Justin sat there and was like, yeah, I get it. I understand. Like, it's part of the process of the NFL, all this, all that. Like, very understanding of it. And I wouldn't be surprised. Again, you mentioned this a couple weeks ago, or really after the Bears got the number 1 overall pick, that maybe they've already had internal conversations with Justin. Like, hey, we're going to take calls. Anything you see and read on the internet about, hey, their sources and all this, like, we're just taking calls. We're just listening because it could be advantageous for us and how we approach the draft, right? And I hope they had those conversations, right? Like, I hope they had those conversations with him, because like, these guys are on the internet and it's like, yeah, he's understanding of it, but still, like, you want transparency between your franchise quarterback and your GM. So I hope they've had those conversations, but there's no way to know. But nonetheless, it's not anything that is really, like, I know people are writing articles about it. That doesn't mean they're trading Justin Fields. Like, that's the crux of our point here.
Right. Until I actually see that Justin Fields has been traded, I'm going to operate under the assumption that they're keeping Justin Fields for the foreseeable future and hopefully for the long-term future. All right, let's hit this really quick. The Bears close on the Arlington Heights property. They announced that this morning. City of Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot obviously put out a statement. Oh, well, they closed on the property, but we can still show them what the business upside of staying in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. I just, it's really a nothing. Like, this really doesn't change anything. Just because they closed on a property doesn't mean okay, we're moving tomorrow. Like, it's like, if you've ever known anyone who's moved houses, like if your parents ever moved or if you ever moved as a kid or whatever, it's like, okay, yeah, there was the day that the offer was accepted, and there's the closing date, and there's actual move date, and da 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 da. It's the same information that we had, 2-3 months ago, whenever they, their offer was accepted or whatever it was.
Yeah, and for people who are unfamiliar with, property leases and management and everything and real
Most of
estate,
us.
most of us. I mean, I think there's people like who really don't know, who are like, oh, like, okay, the state is being built. That's what that means. Like, there's a direct
Right.
correlation between them closing on the property and, hey,
Sure.
the construction starts tomorrow. No, that just means that they've officially purchased the property. But the important part of the statement that the Bears put out is they have to discover whether it's feasible to build on that land. Like, and there's truth to that. Like, I went to high school at Lane Tech in Chicago, close, and Kerry Wood paid $3 million to build this stadium outside of our school. They went to build it, and the ground was like, they couldn't build on it. There was like chemicals in the ground. They could not build on it. So for like 4 years, they postponed the project, and then they had to, get the environmental scientists in there, figure out what was up with the ground, do all this digging. Like, that could be, like, those are things that the Bears have to go through after you close on the land. Now that you own the property, right now you have to see if it's feasible to build a ginormous world-class, what they're calling it, like, event of the Midwest stadium. Like, this is
somewhere where you hope you can host a Super Bowl, theoretically.
Yeah, like, you have to do your due diligence, and they're going to be doing that. And that's why I also think, like, again, I think when people saw the piece of news, they think that the process is expedited. No, like, this is going to be a long process. It's probably going to be another year, I think, before you even know if they're going to build it there, right? Like,
sure.
And then the full plans and everything. Like, it'll be a longer process, and then the 4 years of building it. So, hey, there's a very good chance the Bears could win a Super Bowl at Soldier Field before they go to Arlington Heights. So we'll throw that out there for our Soldier Field lovers, which I am one.
Yeah, and I mean, just to wrap up this conversation, because there's nothing more to say other than this a couple minutes, but the Bears could always, like, they have more money than God anyway. And so if they just wanted to swallow that investment, they very easily could. But also, they could resell it. They weren't the only buyers. They weren't the only potential purchasers for this property. If they decide, like, if the city of Chicago comes through with, the renderings that we saw, what was that, a month or two ago? And the Bears say, okay, well, you add this and this, and then we'll do it. And they say, okay, done. And they say, all right, we're staying in Chicago. They could just turn around and sell that again. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Let's spend a couple minutes doing a mock draft here. What do we got, Kevin? PFF? Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah, we got PFF. Give me a second to pull it up. While I pull it up, I want to say something real quick that I wanted to hit on.
This is your podcast.
It pertains to the Super Bowl and what we saw on Sunday. Everyone who watched, I'm sure you all watched. Can you see the screen?
It's loading.
Just a second.
There we go.
There it is. But real quick, before we get into this, and it pertains to the draft and it pertains to the Super Bowl. I don't think people understand that the Kansas City Chiefs started 10 rookies in the Super Bowl. And they got the third most snaps from rookies in the NFL this year. It was unbelievable.
They started 10 rookies in the game?
I think 10 rookies played in the game. They didn't start.
I was going to say, there's no way they started.
They did not start 10 rookies, but
rookies.
they had at least, I want to say at least 5 or 6 rookies who started. But 10 who played in the game. And it's just like, yeah, Brett Veach and that coaching staff, unbelievable. Unbelievable what they're able to do with their young players. But as it pertains to the Bears, like, it's not outrageous to believe that if the Bears draft really well this year, what a difference that can have on the team as far as the leap that they can take from this year to next year. Like, and this is really critical. Like, and I'm not just talking about the picks that we're about to make here in the first round. We're just going to do a 2-round mock draft. Like, a lot of these guys that are playing critical snaps for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and making, like, I think the 2 cornerbacks that made, one of the interceptions in the AFC Championship against the Bengals, like, were 5th and 6th round picks, man.
Yeah.
Like
the final interception to end the game, to end the AFC Championship.
Like, these guys were nobodies, and all of a sudden here they are playing important snaps in the AFC Championship. So for people who don't believe that, well, you just got to see, you have all this money, the only way you can ever compete is if you spend all this money and spend it on the right players. Like, that's true, and the Eagles are a good testament to that, right? They spent their money really wisely, but on the other side of the field, the team that won the game was the team that developed their rookies, developed 10 rookies, and they have 11 picks this year. How is that possible? Anyway.
Because you know how it's possible, because Howie Roseman is just, like, I don't know how that man does it, but, like, he's a wizard. He's a wizard. Like, he just gets these picks. It's insane. But anyway, all right, let's get into this mock draft. Like Kevin said, we're just going to do 2 rounds, just real quick. Everybody's still learning about these prospects. If anybody is another Chris Nano out there and knows every single prospect that's going to be rounds 1 through 7 in this draft, more power to you. We're not at that stage yet. We're just going to do one for fun, off season starting, and we're just going to talk about this. All right. Kevin, I advocate for trade here. I assume you are the same way on that.
I advocate for trade as well, but here's where again. So like, if what we were talking about earlier is true, right? And the Texans are sitting there nervous, and you have the leverage. Again, it's amazing. Right. You have all of the leverage in the world. Are you ruling what do you think the odds are right now that the Texans would be willing to trade up with you at 1 if, and this is really important. In the next couple months, you need the Bears, I would say, because I think we talked on this podcast where hey, we want CJ Stroud to do well. We want Will Levis to do well. So all these guys are graded higher, so more teams want a quarterback. I think at this point now, you need one to separate from the rest. You need Bryce Young to be the consensus number 1, so teams are saying, hey, we have to move up to get you. We're not content getting the next best guy, whether that's Stroud or Levis. What do you think the odds are that Houston is going to really get desperate and want to trade up to 1 to get probably Bryce Young if he separates?
So I think what's really likely, and somebody brought this up in the chat earlier in the show, but I think once the combine starts, guys like Richardson and Levis are going to shine through and muddy those waters even more. Because those guys have insane physical attributes, and let's call it what it is, gifts. And those guys are insane athletes. They just maybe didn't have the best coaching, maybe didn't have the best talent around them last year at Florida and Kentucky, respectively. So I think once you get to the combine and those guys do start doing interviews and start talking to people and start going through, the 40 and the bench press and all the physical tests, I think they're going to close the gap. Because right now it's probably Young, small gap, Stroud, regular size, larger gap, Levis and Richardson, probably, right? It's probably it's Young by a hair over Stroud, and then a gap, and then the other 2 guys. And not a massive gap, but I think once the combine happens, and once these interviews start happening, and the pro days, I think that gap between the latter 2 and the other 2, and the first 2, is going to close. And I think that's when you're going to start getting these waters muddied. But if you're the Texans, and we talked about for 5 minutes that Jim Irsay is just kind of a weird guy. Why do we have any reason to believe that the Colts don't like Will Levis? We heard it about a month ago. And sometimes it just is what it is. Sometimes what you hear is just what you hear. And that's just how it is. They might just really like Will Levis, and the Texans might be able to sit there and say, hey, we could get Young anyway. Or they have Young and Stroud graded the same and they're fine with either 2 of them. So I'm more inclined to go with the Colts here. Okay. But I understand why you bring up the Texans.
Well, I only bring it up because it's just so intriguing with that 12th round, with that number 12 overall. And there are people who believe, well, would you even get that number 12 too? Would you?
Hefty price.
It's a hefty price to pay. You're talking about a real impact player still at number 12 for them, and I don't think again they're willing to trade up just to get a guy.
Well, because if you're the Texans, think about it this way: if you let's say for argument's sake that the Colts trade up to number 1 and they take Young. Let's just say for argument's sake they take Bryce Young. Okay, you're the Texans. You take C.J. Stroud at 2. At 12, you could still get a Pete Skoronski or Stroud's teammate Paris Johnson Jr. Even better.
Or Jackson Smith and Jigba, they need a receiver,
right? But obviously, you probably want to protect him, or you want to make sure you have that offensive lineman. Is my point. You could still get one of these top offensive linemen to pair with, C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, whatever quarterback you'd so choose. So the Texans are still in a very fortuitous situation. The Colts are desperate. Their roster is built to win now. The Texans, they signed, D'Amico Ryans to the 6-year contract for a reason. This isn't going to happen tomorrow. This is going to happen next year. Texans are in for at least a 2 to 3 year situation. They have some players on their defense. They have a couple guys on offense, but it's going to be a couple years. The Colts are right now. Their offensive line is decent. Their defense is good. They need a couple receivers maybe, but mostly they need the quarterback, and then they're a playoff team.
I agree.
The Colts are way more desperate.
I agree. And so I'm good with Colts. And real quick, I'm I just don't think at this point we can even include Vegas in these conversations because of
I agree.
the smoke around Aaron Rodgers and the likelihood that happens. And if that happens, that just nullifies, any sort of trade up for them. Obviously, they're not going to trade for quarterback, at least in the first round. They could find a guy to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a couple of years in the later rounds, but they're not going to trade up. So I'm going to rule out the Raiders. So let's go with the Colts. So we're going to do a trade here. Now let's look at compensation now for what the Bears should return in this. Again, so here's the other side of it, right? Like if the Colts truly are as desperate as Jim Irsay is making it seem, which they are. Like, are you going to be able to get more compensation because they're so eager on this, or is it the other way around? Like, again, they might still be content with either of those guys at 4, but they are, that being Levis or Stroud, but they want Bryce Young, so they're not going to give you that much. And this is a situation where you may not hold all of the leverage if they have a great grade on Levis or Stroud. So, what do you think it is? Is it the fact that they're willing they want to move up, but they'd be fine staying at 4, or they're just Jim Irsay's a fucking psycho. They're all in a number 1. They're going to give you more than what you are even asking for.
I think they'll give you more. I think they'll be desperate because also, the Cardinals could feasibly trade down to 7 with the Raiders. Like that's less 4, 7 to 3 is less of a jump. So the Texans take Young, let's say that the Raiders take Stroud, and then you're like, okay, well, crap, do we really want to take Levis or Richardson at 4? Then you're looking at a trade down. So I think they're intent on getting, and maybe it's Levis, I don't know, but I think for argument's sake, they want to make sure they have their pick of the litter here. I don't think they're content to just sit at 4. I think then too many variables enter the fray if you sit at 4. And I mean, that one variable ends up being the Cardinals, but I mean, that's one extra team. I mean, because you assume that the Texans are taking a quarterback no matter what. That's still another team late on draft day. Once the clock starts, a team that could call the Bears and be like, actually, we want it. So
I agree.
It's just something to think about.
I agree. Okay, so let's look at compensation then. So Bears give up number 1. I say you have to 100% get a number 1 in first round of 2024. You obviously number 4 overall. I think you could probably get a second rounder this year.
I think you push for 35.
I think you push for 35, and then you probably go for like a 3. I mean, you might be able to get a 2 next year. I mean, let's see what happens. PFF says there's a 75% chance the trade gets accepted if Bears trade number 1 overall and receive number 4 overall in 2023, number 35 overall in 2023, and a first rounder and a second rounder in 2024. Like, that's an ideal haul. I mean, we can offer it and see if it goes through, but what do you think is the likelihood that really gets accepted?
I mean, I think it's pretty likely. So when I've been doing like my own, like playing around with it, and the Bears, like how against are we including like 150 to try and get 140? Or are we just not trying to give up anything other than number 1? I feel like you could try and finagle and push for another pick in this draft. But also, I mean, like a first and, 2 firsts and 2 seconds this year also. I mean, that puts you in a advantageous situation for sure, regardless, even if you don't do that.
Right.
Even if you just take the 4 picks that we have selected.
And I feel like a lot of times you're right. Like there's an additional pick added by the team that's trading, out, and then the other team will just like throw it in because like it's funny. Like that's where actually you might be able to catch teams off guard because when you're in that negotiation room, you're just like, hey, like how about you just like we'll throw in 150 and you give us 140. How about that, right? And they're like, you know what, fuck it. That's fine. And like according to PFF, if you added that, if the Bears gave up the 150 that they got from New England, and then the 140 received from the Colts in 2023, like it lowers the chance of it being accepted by 1%. Like the teams in that room are like throwing picks around like it's fucking nothing at times. So let's offer that. So Bears give up 1 in 150, receive 435, 140 in 2023, and a first rounder and a second rounder in 2024. And that trade has been, it doesn't say. I don't think it was
looks
accepted.
Like rejected.
It was rejected. Okay.
Based on the red.
Based on the red, it's not showing the text. So we'll take away 140, 150 and see if that changes anything. Still rejected. Okay, so maybe they're not willing to give up that second rounder in 2024.
But also, like, we have to wonder what goes into this, like how this gets weighted.
Yeah,
too.
I know. It's
where it's like,
I'm
okay, like
sure.
what goes into how much. So we might just have to force this through. We just have to force it to start it.
We'll give up a 150. We'll give up the 150 though.
I don't think Ryan Poles is doing that.
You don't think?
I don't think that's happening.
Keep all the picks.
Yeah, 100%. In the top 150.
Okay.
I just don't think that's happening.
All right.
Yeah, force it through.
Sorry, Colts, we're forcing this trade.
We got to hit force first.
A forced trade. Did it go? No. Oh wait, here we go.
Now we got to do it again. I think
we got to do it again. This PFF. Okay, yeah, I see what we did there. 435. Recap the trade for the listeners. No, I think I got it. Forced trade. Woo. Get screwed, Colts. All right, so the Bears moved on to number 4. And now we'll see what PFF has. And PFF's really great. Okay, so it has the Colts taking Bryce Young. It has the Texans taking C.J. Stroud. And PFF is so weird. Like, their mock draft is all over the place. But it's got the Cardinals taking Tyree Wilson. So now here we are at number 4. So now, in some universe, the Cardinals take the edge, Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech.
Which I don't think is I honestly don't think is insane. Like, people he might be one of those guys where once the combine happens and these like physical tests happen, he might be one of those guys that forces his way up. A lot of people really like his raw talent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's possible. And again, like the combine changes a lot of those things. Sure. People fall in love with athletic traits as they should. So we have a lot of people in the chat saying double trade down twice. What are you going to do? Are you able to trade down again? Or are you just, want to sit there and just take your guy? Like, do you want to just take here Jalen Carter and Will Anderson? I feel like you have been a major proponent of, all right, if you got to this point, you can't miss taking one of these guys here. You can't pass it up. These guys are generational talents. But you might be able to get some more assets if you trade down again.
So in this scenario where Tyree Wilson goes 3rd, I don't hate trading to 7. Because there's still a chance that, let's say the Raiders trade up to 4 and take Levis. Then you're still not guaranteed Carter or Anderson because the Lions and the Seahawks are right there. But I mean, man, like there's a real good chance. It's a gamble here. I think I vote take Carter, but I could hear the argument for a trade to 7.
Okay. Before we even do that, let's break down real quick who we believe is better. Okay. Let's go Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. I did a breakdown. I don't know if you have a strong opinion on who you like more, but I think I have a stronger lean on who I would rather take if the Bears are in this situation. But I'll start with you. If you had to take one of the two, who is it? You're Ryan Poles. You have 10 minutes on the clock.
I flip-flop on this a lot, to be honest. I was reading something that Adam Johns wrote this morning about how, like Carter's awesome. And he's he fits that mold of the 3 technique, which is the engine for the defense, famously, as Matt Eberflus said. But you can get a defensive tackle. Like, there's a couple premier defensive tackles that may be available in this offseason. And meanwhile, premier edge rushers don't always come around as often here. So I think I'm probably leaning Anderson if we are going to use this pick. But I mean, I could, I could be convinced like Anderson, but of the two, if I was in this, probably Anderson.
I would agree. I was watching the tape again today, and his player comp for me is Nick Bosa, man. Like, I just see that, and I'm like, this rare combination of speed.
The defensive player of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll probably win that award again. It's just a game record, and Will Anderson has the capability to do it. And I think the comforting thing about him is like the accolades are there, like single season sack record, Alabama.
At Alabama, literally, like not at Southeastern Missouri.
Exactly. Exactly. 2-time SEC Defensive Player of the Year, first player ever to win the Bronco Nagurski Award twice. Like the stats are there, right? People have questions about Jalen Carter's production when you look at the his stats in his career as a 1-year starter. His stats don't jump off the stat sheet the way they do for Will Anderson. Like everything is there for Will Anderson, but he is just a rare athlete and will immediately make an impact, like an Aiden Hutchinson type impact. But I think he's better than Aiden Hutchinson. Like I think he's far better as a prospect than Aiden Hutchinson was coming out of college last year. So yes, I would take Will Anderson over Jalen Carter. We're both in agreement on that. But let's explore a trade here. So again, assuming that let's take the Raiders out of the mix. Okay, take the Raiders out of the mix. Let's assume for right now.
Okay.
Just for right now because of the Aaron Rodgers stuff.
See, I wouldn't want to trade past 7. Like that's as far as I'm willing to go.
Why?
Just because then you're just diluting depending on what you could get, I guess.
It's one pick if it's Atlanta at 8. It's one pick. If you move to 8, you're looking at two very also QB desperate teams in Atlanta and Carolina at 8 and 9. Like, who are you losing? Like, at that point, if you're moving down to 8, you're gone on Carter and Anderson. All right, you're gone. That's not going to
be 8, okay. I stay in the top 10 then would be my argument.
Okay. Stay in the top 10.
That's my so I would accept going down to 9.
Okay, I would accept going down to 8. Let's look at Atlanta at 8, right? I mean, Atlanta is a team that they also need a quarterback. Yeah, they're in sort of a longer rebuild, but if you don't want to move down to 9, you could probably get at 8 too. And again, they're ahead of but at the same time, Carolina is in the same division as Atlanta. You could see a similar thing there where, hey, we want to
also Atlanta might just get Lamar. Like Atlanta might just get Lamar.
I guess that's possible. We sure as hell know Carolina's not getting Lamar. So let's take a look at Carolina here. All right, let's take a look at that and see what you'd be able to get and see what kind of picks Carolina has. We're pulling it up here. Again, if you're listening to this in podcast form, we're sorry that you're not seeing the visuals here. You can watch it back on our YouTube page, Bears Nation Podcast. But so the Bears would be giving up number 4 overall here and will receive number 9 overall. Would you want to – so this is like – you get 39. You have to get 39 overall from the Carolina Panthers. I think you have to. And then do you ask for a first rounder next year?
I think you can only get 9 and a pick this year. I don't think you're getting a first rounder next year. I think you're only getting one first rounder.
I think I agree. But I do
honestly, I don't even know if you're getting 39. 61 might be the only one on the table.
No, you have to get 30. I think you have to. I mean, if you're moving up 5 slots in the top 10 to get a franchise quarterback, sorry, you're giving up that second round pick. I think. I mean, I just think you have to. PFF says here that they're not interested in trading for the pick. I wouldn't buy that. I don't see why.
Well, it depends. It depends because if the Raiders get Garoppolo or Rodgers and the Falcons get Lamar, then the Panthers can probably afford to wait because they'll still get Levis or Richardson.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Which, I mean, at this point, I would say that's probably the most likely scenario. Like, the Raiders are going to get one of these. Like, they're not going to pin unless the Raiders trade up to 1. Like, the Raiders, same thing as the Colts. Like, they have a roster right now, like, that can win if you get the right guy. So, like, and then it's kind of the same thing for the Falcons. The Falcons have a lot of talent too. Like, you have Lamar to that offense. That's pretty good. So I feel like that's the most likely scenario right now.
Okay. All right. So I'm with you. Do you get in a scenario where the Jets are willing to trade up if they don't get Aaron Rodgers either? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the way the QB market plays out as far as Derek Carr, as far as Aaron Rodgers, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes up, these mock drafts. So I think for the sake of it, you want to just draft Will Anderson?
Yeah.
All right.
Based on the limited information we have. The chat is not going to like it, but whatever.
We're drafting Will Anderson. I'm sorry. I mean, if you walk away with an extra pick next year and a franchise-altering defensive end, you're not upset. You're not upset. We're drafting Will Anderson here.
And an extra pick this year because you got 35 in this draft as well.
Yeah.
Devin Witherspoon going 5 is hilarious.
Okay, so real quick. So, yeah, PFF has an obsession with Devin Witherspoon. Can you explain it for me? Quarterback out of Illinois. What is it? I don't get it.
I mean, he's just like flown up draft boards. Like at first it was in middle of the college football year, it was, oh, he's a first rounder. And then as time went on and on and on, oh, he's top 20. Oh, he's top 15. And now it's sounding like he's going to be top 10. The more and more, I mean, he's unreal. Like he's an unreal ball hawk, unreal in coverage. And the dude can hit. I mean, there's hits from the one everyone will remember is the hit he had against Indiana where it just came flying from the secondary and laid out a screen pass, just sniffed it out completely.
I remember that.
And dude's helmet popped off, and it was I mean, it was the Davion Clowney hit basically from a couple of years ago is what it was when he was still in college. So that's basically what it was. I mean, people love him. People love his mentality. He is a grinder. He has like that grind mindset where he just like never takes no for an answer. He just works and works and works and works. But I mean, people love him. He continues to rise. I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, that's impressive for Devin
Witherspoon.
Witherspoon. So real quick before we continue the draft here, so the Falcons took Quentin Johnson today, and real quick, I just want to break down the wide receivers here because in the event that we did trade down to 8 or 9, I would have said we'd take a wide receiver, 100%. You have to go down and you get your guy, but I want to know where you're at because I finally for months I didn't know how I would order what is the consensus top 3 in Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson. And I'm like, I'm almost there. But assuming we got to 9 or something, right, and 8, and all 3 wide receivers were on the board, in that situation, who would you take out of the 3? Because that's a very real possibility.
I mean, in the event that you're only taking a wide receiver in this situation?
Yeah. Like, just assume wide receiver. Like, obviously, tackle, Skoronski, Paris Johnson's on the board, but just assume they're honed in on wide receiver.
Probably Johnson, but like I would rather, in this scenario that we're in right now, like it seems like Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to continue to fall, and he might fall to the second round. And if you get 35 here, feel like you're going to have an opportunity to get him at the top of the second round. So I wouldn't like it. Let's say you trade back to 8 or 9 and trade out of 4. I would say take one of the offensive linemen. But the hell do I know?
Yes, I would. So I real quick, I just want to read you my player comps that I came up for these 3 guys when I watched them back today. Jackson Smith-Njigba, a player comp for him was Stephon Diggs. Not a superior athlete, but a crisp route runner, ability to find a hole in the open zone, very sure hands, never drops the ball, great ball tracking skills. I think that's a good comp for him. Jordan Addison, I hate to say it, but like I see Justin Jefferson in him. Like the same weaknesses for Jordan Addison were listed for Justin Jefferson coming out of the draft, right? Too small. It's Jordan Addison 6'0", 174. Like I'm taller and way more than Jordan Addison. He can be intimidated by, heavier cornerback to the line of scrimmage, but the way that they run, the way that they track the ball, and then they're, pretty good, spectacular catchability, separation and speed. And I see a lot of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Again, a lot shorter, but same sort of build is Jordan Addison. And then Quentin Johnson, I see DeAndre Hopkins. Just unbelievable change of direction, can win 50-50 versus anyone, most explosive player in the draft at any position. Not a route running technician, but the ability to separate against anyone after the release. So, I would say out of all the positions, like wide receiver is the one position where I can evaluate talent the best, and those are my player comps for them. Quentin Johnson for me would be the guy that I would take at number 8. But let's go continue with the draft here. I just want to throw that out there. So we have the Panthers taking Anthony Richardson at 9. The Raiders.
So all the quarterbacks, 7. All the quarterbacks are gone now for reference.
So 4 quarterbacks in the top 10. Absurd. Yep. Let's resume it.
Not out of the question though. As this is running, not out of the question. Like it seems, and I like I said, I think Richardson and Levis are going to force themselves, higher in the first round as time goes on and as these kind of, the combine and things go on.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I mean, Richardson's going to want a 4.4, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh my god!" All right,
right.
So,
I mean, he has insane measurables.
So this is interesting. So we just simulated up to pick number 20. Some notable picks. The Commanders took Peter Skoronski at 16. The Buccaneers took Paris Johnson out of Ohio State at 19. And then the Seahawks took Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College, at pick 20. And this, what this feels like to me? Like with a guy like Zay Flowers, who's super fast, right? He's gonna run a 4.3. He's gonna go nuts at the combine. It feels like a classic NFL GM overthinking the way that the Eagles did when they took Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Like that's what that feels like. So here's where things get interesting. So now, okay, let's see here let's see when the next. So Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith-Njigba are yet to come off the board. Let's see when the next one. Okay, so they just went back.
They both just went. That's the end of that.
because I was going to explore the idea of trading up around pick 22 or 23 if one of those guys falls. What are your thoughts of that?
I don't know if you would have been able to make it happen. You probably would have had to give up the first rounder in 20
No,
that you
no,
got
no,
from
no, 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 no,
Indianapolis.
no, no, no. No way. No way.
It's possible.
No way.
35 and 54 don't get it done.
35, 54, and throw in a fifth rounder. That might get it done.
I think that's too many picks for this draft. That's too many picks to give up from this draft for one guy. Somebody in the chat mentioned like you have to get as many guys as possible. You don't have the luxury of being able to give up 3 picks for a wide receiver. You just don't.
I know. But here's the only situation where I think that has to happen, right? If say a lot of those holes that the person in the chat, I would like to get the name of them in here. I forgot who said it. G Station maybe. Say in free again. That's a free agency. The draft happens after free agency, after the trade market for the most part, right? We know holdouts occur in the summer, and there's a chance that you could trade for a Mike Evans or DeAndre Hopkins after the draft. But say they approach it and they fill a lot of holes, and it's like, oh my God, we actually don't have as many holes to fill now. We spend our money in the right areas, but we still don't have our consensus wide receiver 1. We didn't pay anyone in free agency. We didn't trade for anyone yet. Would you then be like, hey, we can't approach 2023 the same way we did 2022 without a superstar for Justin Fields? We saw what these guys have done for other young quarterbacks in the league. We have to get our guy. In that case, I'm willing to pay the 3 picks. That's fine. You know, Ryan Poles has had the ability in his one draft for the Chicago Bears, with a caveat I say, to trade down and accumulate more picks. So if you do trade up here, that doesn't mean he can't trade down more in the 4th and get a couple 5th-round picks, get another 6th-round pick, right? Accumulate more. And yeah, it's not, the 54th overall pick, but if that means you're getting Jackson Smith-Njigba or Jordan Addison 10 picks lower than where they probably should be valued at ADP, then that's fine.
See, I don't know if you're getting them 10 spots because, like, these guys continue to fall. Like, in these mock drafts that you see in these draft big boards, like, these guys continue to fall down. And it's not like anybody in this draft is a Jamar Chase or even a Drake London. Like, it doesn't sound like there's nobody that kind of like the same that you were talking about with the quarterbacks. There's no one guy. Like, you're just as likely, in my opinion, to find a Quentin Johnson in the 4th or 3rd round. Like, I think that if you can't get an Evans or a Hopkins, and even if you do, like, free agents break down faster because they're older. Like, you need to try and get somebody for the next wave too. I just don't think you're at a liberty to trade, especially 35 and 54 for 22, and then you're sitting twiddling your thumbs till 64.
I'm with you. That's fair. I'm with you. Yeah, it's interesting to explore. And again, I don't know. Like, there's a chance that Jackson Smith-Njigba falls further than 22. Again, I think people are going to be spooked by the fact that he didn't play this year at all with the injury, right? And then you have the Senior Bowl, and you got a lot of fresh tape from these other guys. Let's resume the draft here. I don't think it's out of the realm possibility that happens. So we're approaching the Bears' 2nd round pick. Nathaniel Dell just got taken out of Houston. Big Senior Bowl name. And the Bears are now on the clock here. Bijan Robinson taking the pick before them at 34 by the Arizona Cardinals. So here you are at 35 overall with some good talent on the board. Some of the top names. Osiris Torrance, a real good guard out of Florida. That's a name I'm interested. Mozzie Smith, defensive lineman out of Michigan. B.J. Ojulari out of LSU. That's another guy I really like. Josh Downs, wide receiver out of North Carolina, is a name a lot of people like. I'm not as high on him. DeJuan Jones is the largest human of all time. Let me tell you, I went to school with him. So looking at here, do you have to go offensive lineman here? Are you looking at Osiris Torrance at pretty good value at 35?
So this is kind of where, like you talked about, that, free agency impact comes into play. Because if you pay a couple offensive tackles or one offensive tackle and one offensive guard, then you can afford to wait probably until the 5th or 6th round or 4th round to take an offensive lineman. You don't need one plug and play right away if you're not going to take him in the 1st round probably. So I'm probably leaning. I know it's not going to be attractive to go back-to-back defense again, but kind of like it did last year, that just kind of might be the situation you're in where best pick available, got to go defense. But, I mean, it just depends.
Why am I blanking? I'm an idiot, but did the Bears trade down last year? Why am I for in the second round? How did they get the second rounder? Why am I blanking?
Khalil Mack trade.
Khalil Mack trade. That's right. I also, again, we've seen the tendency for Ryan Poles to trade down, and I see Adam Dobbs in the chat says Torrance in a heartbeat, loves him. Sure. I don't think you're gushing over him. Would you be willing to trade down a couple more picks here and accumulate a couple just to trade down 4 spots, and the guy that you want could still be there 4 picks later? Or if you just like that was the case for the George Pickens situation, basically, was, oh, fuck, the Bears missed on taking him with the Gordon pick. They could still get him, or with the Brisker pick, they could still get him, right? Because they had the second rounder, there's a chance that you could still get your guy if you trade down even just 4 slots. So I would actually propose here that the Bears trade down in the second round at 35 if there's no one that they really love.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Even if you trade down a couple spots for one of these big offensive tackles that are still available later, I just think maybe you're like, yeah, I'm not opposed to trading down a couple spots because I think there's just a lot of defensive talent that's still up at the top. So yeah, I would not be opposed to trading down a couple of spots.
All right, let's explore a trade real quick with Vegas and see if you could trade down to 38. You're trading down 3 slots to 38, and let's see the type of return you could get for something like that. If you're giving up 38, you can ask for 38. Nope, that's too much. 38. Could you get 109? So you could maybe get a 38th overall pick and the 109 overall pick, just move down 3 slots. So you pick up a fourth rounder. Would you be interested? I mean, I mean, a 4th rounder.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that gives you more right around easy.
So, and that's a real possibility. That's something 100%. That they should do. So now let's see if the Bears can still get O'Cyrus Torrance. Probably not. There he goes to the Rams. And then,
makes sense.
So now
that actually makes a lot of sense.
So now you're at 38. This is where I would say you take Josh Downs.
Sure.
Again, contingent on free agency, but Josh Downs is a real good athletic talent for you out of UNC. I had to watch more tape on him, but solid stats from his career at UNC. A name to watch in the second round. I wouldn't expect him to be a guy that flies up draft boards after the combine. I don't think he's gonna wow anyone crazy at the combine. Sorry for those watching that I don't have PFF Plus or whatever. I'm not paying for that shit. That's the shit that's gonna tell you Sam Mustipher is the best offensive lineman in the NFL. I'm not doing that. But yeah, I'm down for Josh Downs here. So you trade down, you still get a good player. You accumulate another 4th rounder. Are we in consensus on Josh Downs?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I could see the case made for Henley just because Nicholas Morrow isn't going to be around forever, and you want someone young to pair with Sanborn, theoretically. But, I mean, offense and wide receiver takes precedent here for sure.
Yeah, I think you have to. We're going Josh Downs.
Ooh.
Boom. So there you go. So we took Josh Downs here, and now we have 54 because we picked that up from... what is 54? Is that the Baltimore? That's the Baltimore pick.
That's right? The Baltimore pick, yeah.
So this is where you probably, I think you had to go defense here. So looking at some of the names available,
really?
Guy Sidney, I mean, just again, contention on free agency, we'll keep saying that, but that side of the ball has more holes. More holes. You just have less talent overall there. You can say what you want about the caliber of players on the offensive line, but you have more bodies at offensive line. If you look at guard, I think Cody Whitehair is a cap casualty, right? But if he's not and he's healthy, that's your starting guard. Tevin Jenkins is your other starting guard. You already have, Braxton Jones. You're going to get somebody, whether that be Orlando Brown Jr. or someone else at tackle. That's a given. And then you're rolling with Luke Patrick. They might sit there and say, hey, it's not a necessity for us to get a Luke Whippler or one of these other guys available,
sure.
Joe
That's
Tippmann,
fair.
right? They could sit back and say, hey, we just got to fill somebody, Matthew Bergeron, fill somebody on defense. Not going Sidney Brown, although I fucking love Sidney Brown, and I would love to take him. You can't take a safety because it's not needed. I think Trenton Simpson's an interesting name. I don't.
Well, I mean, I think you could scroll up. I mean, I think you could take Ika. defensive,
Yeah.
like interior defensive tackle, like even if he's an interior lineman, like you pair a guy like that with Will Anderson, like the line is a huge need. I know we like Justin Jones, but if you could get someone who's basically going to do the same thing that Justin Jones does, might as well take him to pair with Anderson for the next 6, 7, 8, however many years.
Yeah.
If you're not going to take an offensive lineman here. Otherwise, I mean, I would advocate for Sidney Brown. I think Sidney Brown has the, variability to maybe play corner. Like, I don't think he has to be a safety. I think you can move him to corner possibly.
I think that's fair.
I think he started at Illinois as a corner, actually.
And then they flexed him to safety.
I'm almost positive he did.
In a lot of situations,
I'm almost positive.
You get nickelbacks who it's not a difficult transition, right? If you played cornerback your whole life, it's the same concept. Like, I think that's possible if that's the strategy. If that's the strategy,
plus,
hey,
also,
we're drafting you to be cornerback.
Also, Jaquan Brisker missed time last year with injuries. Eddie Jackson's missed time almost every year since he got the contract with injuries. That's good depth. But, I mean, I think taking Ika is a really strong proposition as well.
Yeah, you look at Ika, a little bit more of a raw prospect. Again, another guy where the stats don't jump off the board here. 0 sacks last year, 6 in 2021, 1 in 2020. 3 QB hits each year. Significant hurries in 2021 and 2022. Just wasn't getting home this past year. A little bit more of a raw prospect, I'd say, but somebody you're willing to work with, and you really bolster that defensive front. And boy, is this game won in the trenches. So I'm fine with that. Let me just check on the board to see if there's anyone else that piques my interest. Jack Campbell, he's not taking him at 54. I like Jack Campbell. I really like Isaiah Foskey, edge out of Notre Dame, but I don't think that they would take him. Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver at Tennessee. I do not like Jalen Hyatt. Let me just say that. I think
a lot of people do.
He is a fallacy. His tape reminds me very much of Velus Jones Jr. And yes, they both come from Tennessee.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm Jalen Hyatt. I run away from defender. Sorry, that's all I can do. This is the NFL now. You're not getting open. That's what this screams to me. And I could be very wrong. But Jalen Hyatt to me isn't going to be anything special. But let's take Siaki Ika. I think I'm fine. You got to do it. So
also, this is again, it's February 15th. So much is going to this is our first initial playing around, seeing what happens. That's what we're working with here.
Yeah, this is mock draft 1.0 for a reason, right? We're getting graded now by PFF. Let's see what grade they give us in our mock draft. We're gonna be.
I hope it's enough.
Draft. Oh, here, pay for PFF Plus, or else we're gonna give you an F on your draft. I think we did pretty good, personally. I think we deserve
all things considered
on this draft, and they give us a resounding A.
Bang!
Well done, Bears Nation podcast. Who needs Ryan Poles when you have?
I mean, a lot of that was also some of the picks made by the computer went our way. I think so. I think we
one Velus is playing. Yeah, it got weird. I'm telling you,
it got weird.
But in fairness, it's only going to get weirder at the draft.
Right, 100%.
These 100%. Things are so weird. Teams are so stupid. The whole Jackson Smith and Jigba falling thing could very well happen. Overall, I think that this is probably at this moment, given what we know, the most likely scenario as far as the trade down. And I just think if you walk away, the Colts are going to be a bad football team next year, man. Regardless of who they take, they're going to be a bad football team. You put yourself in the position to get Marvin Harrison Jr. next year with that first rounder that the Colts give you for a trade down, and you get your generational edge defender and Will Anderson Jr., plus a quality player in Josh Downs. But I like the thing that I think we threw in here that a lot of people haven't done is that trade down in the second round.
100%.
So
yeah, I agree. All right.
With it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked through a lot too. We didn't just run through it and buzz through it. I think we started this with 15 minutes into the 20 minutes in the episode, and we squeezed 40 minutes out of it almost. So yeah, we went through a lot there, and eventually we'll make them longer as Kevin and myself have more time to look at these guys and read more stuff and cultivate more information. And of course, this free agency and the combine and stuff happen as well. So this is far from our last mock draft. We will do more as the offseason goes on. We'll talk about more stuff. We'll go through more scenarios for the trades and things like that. And then, of course, when things do happen, we'll be here for that as well. So thanks to everyone that watched and kind of commented and did the draft along with us. That was a lot of fun. Can't wait till we do the full thing and you guys are screaming at us about 6th-round picks. It'll be a lot of fun. But appreciate all the listeners, all the viewers. You guys are the best each and every week. We appreciate you a lot. We will be back. This has been Bears Nation Podcast. I'm Jake Hassan. That's Kevin. Until next time, bear down.